My name's Tennyson E Stead, briefly. I am the writer and director of the upcoming 8-sided film Quantum Theory, as well as one of the founding members of the ensemble. During our last vlog, we talked about tone in cinema and how it actually works. Well, today I'd like to discuss sort of one of the subsections of managing the action of a film, which is the casting process. And I think one of the areas where Hollywood first started to get distracted by tone as a core principle in producing film is in casting. So what I want to talk to you about today is what value a great actor actually brings to a role versus what people imagine the casting process works like when they haven't necessarily worked with actors for an extended period of time, and the mistakes that they make that can influence the quality, ultimately, of the film that they're producing. So, when I bring in an actor into the studio and I ask them to read for a role, I'm not looking for a performance. Every single shoot we do is going to be rehearsed. They're going to have an opportunity to get to know the other actors and feel them out, play with them before we shoot. There's going to be an opportunity to learn and memorize the text and really do the text work of breaking down what characters are experiencing and what their frame of reference brings to any particular moment that may experience over the course of the film. You know, there's a lot of labor that goes into figuring out what the real perspective of a character is, and then figuring out how those characters are using the words that are on the page to accomplish the mission that they've been given over the course of the story of the film. So, you're not going to get that sitting in a room after a character's had the pages that you want them to read for 3 or 4 days. That's not remotely a possibility, okay? What you're looking for instead is the sets of tools that they're going to bring to the work that I just described. When you do rehearse them, when you do introduce them to the other actors, what have they learned over the course of their career that's going to enable them to find opportunities in the script? You're not looking for them to identify those opportunities before the audition. You're looking for them to show their hand when it comes to how they work and what tool sets they bring to that process. Okay? So don't worry about whether their performance is too fast or too slow or too dark or too loud. That's not important. You can tell them to quiet down, and they will. They're actors. They can play more than one thing. You're not looking for a sense of whether they're mom-like or whether they're kid-like or whether they're spunky. That's not helpful to you as a director, okay? Because an actor can be all of those things if you need them to. What you need to find out is how they approach labor. And specifically, what habits do they have when it comes to breaking down text that are going to empower them to pursue the action that the character pursues over the course of the story with, first of all, honesty and truth in a way that you can believe and in a way that matches the stakes of the story. In other words, are they capable of believing that everything that's wrong in the movie is actually wrong to such a degree that the urgency that the character experiences in pursuing those stakes is the level of urgency it should be? Are they panicking enough? Are they in it enough to understand how important the action is and what the consequences are if it doesn't go wrong? And do they have the expressiveness to communicate that as they do the thing that they're doing? Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing is, as they do that, how many opportunities are they going to find to interact with all the other characters in surprising ways and dig out minor actions that are going to help them in their journey that maybe you didn't see? Okay, in other words, they're in a conversation with another actor and there's a line of dialogue that it turns out could mean one of two things. And one character, the character that you're not auditioning, asks the character that you are auditioning a question, and the other actor blurts out the answer that's on the text, but it means something completely different than what you thought. And you go, oh. That can happen on a big level where it can have a completely different meaning, but it can also happen on a minor level. And when an actor does that and when it's good, it's not just because they understood the text differently, it's because they're looking at the job that they're there to do. Let's say that scene is about making sure their grandma's mortgage isn't taken away, and they're talking to the bank person, and the bank person asks them a question and they give them an answer. And the reason they're giving that answer is because they want to save grandma's mortgage, and they just found a better, or at least a different way of saving grandma's mortgage than the one that you thought was there. If they can have that idea, how do they have that idea? Where did that idea come from? What habits are contributing to that? Okay, and then how do they express it? And can they express it in a way that makes the character more and more and more specific, and therefore more and more and more believable? And the more those moments happen, the more real the character becomes, because we're layered people. And those things are happening all the time in real life. And they happen 2 or 3 times at once. And all of those thoughts and all of those reactions will happen inside you all at once. And if they can layer in those reactions through the rehearsal process and have complex responses to simple questions, and then choose a path forward, as opposed to just doing the one simple thing that's on the page, you're going to get a very lifelike performance. Do they have the ability to spot those opportunities, and then can they layer them in there? How do you see that during an audition? Well, you have to be able to identify the habits of that actor and the things that they've learned on site after having known them for 3 minutes. You have to be able to see all of that work happening in the actor. And the only way that's going to happen is if you take some acting classes. So what I suggest for any serious director, if you're serious, and I'm hoping if you're watching these videos that you're considering at least that you might be, what you need to do is take some movement lessons so you can identify what movement training is and how it works, so that you can see when an actor's being expressive with their body and when they're choosing to be expressive with their body, and when it's forced and when it's not. And so you can see the actors that have studied a little bit of movement, and you can see the actors that have studied so much movement that it's on autopilot, and they just have physical reactions to things, including their own thoughts and ideas, and those reactions are structured and you can change them and work with them, okay? You need to study voice training so that you can hear when an actor is projecting and when they're not. You can hear the difference between an actor that's projecting just in an intimate way, having an intimate conversation, and I can't even bring my voice up into my throat anymore, so I'm not going to try the other thing. But you can hear when an actor's mumbling and not enunciating. You need to be able to hear that difference, because it gives an actor choices. They can choose to talk to somebody across the room, or they can choose to bring it down so quiet that someone has to walk towards them to hear them. And you want to find actors that have those choices so hammered down that they can do it instinctually without thinking about it, because you don't need them thinking about their voice. You need them thinking about what their job is in the scene. You want to be able to spot those habits. Scene work. Are they instinctually identifying what their job is in the scene, and are they identifying the people that are standing in their way, and are they engaging those people to get them out of the way and get the conflicts resolved as efficiently and as passionately and motivatedly as possible? You gotta take some scene work classes. I recommend classical theater, and you also want to find actors who have emotional availability, right? Who are in the moment. And when something happens that interrupts their action, they experience it viscerally, and they have emotional reactions because their emotions create more conflict. If you get angry about something that's happening because it's interrupting what you're supposed to be doing, because what you're doing is so important, and you get angry because it's not going your way, and you need to solve that problem, your anger makes the scene more interesting. Number one, because people can relate to it, something for them to catch on to, but also because this would be easier if you were less angry, right? So calming yourself down becomes another job that you have to do to get the thing done that you're there to do. Having an actor that's emotionally available is going to make the scene more interesting. So how do you spot emotional availability? Well, take some Meisner classes. Take some classes in emotional availability. You know? Do that work, and you'll start to be able to identify the habits that come from that kind of rigorous study. And then when you audition these actors, you'll be able to see their toolbox and see the actual things that they're doing to express the choices that they're making. Because you can tell them to make different choices. That's not a problem. What you need to understand is when you do tell them to make different choices, what are they drawing on, and how are they going to satisfy that demand from you? Don't look for the performance, look for the toolbox. That's how you audition. And the reason why it's relevant to our conversation about tone, which is just the last blog we did, is because when you ask an actor to play an emotion or play a feeling, you're doing what's called mugging. You're distancing yourself from the action, and it's going to be boring. That's the short version. When you ask an actor to play an emotion, when you ask an actor to play a tone, when you ask an actor, there's one other thing. I wrote it down. There's a developmental breakdown on mugging. If you go to the 8-sided forum, you click on developmental breakdown on the right-hand column, scroll down, there's one. It's just called mugging. It explains what mugging is, but basically mugging is when you ask an actor to focus on something other than the action of the story. Don't do that. Just tell an actor why the action of the story is so important. You know, don't ask them to play tense or urgent. Don't ask them to growl. Just tell them, help them understand why the thing that they're doing is so vital and visceral that the problems they're facing today are really big problems that they need to respond to. You see what I'm saying? And then let them find the response. And you'll wind up with a much more layered, detailed performance. And they'll come up with different stuff every time you ask them to do it, and then you sandwich it together. You take the good stuff, you sandwich it together, and now you've got complex, lifelike performances. That's what you look for in the casting process. And this is Tennyson E Stead signing off.